Good afternoon, everyone. This webinar, Web-Based Coastal Resiliency Planning Tools, is the third and final in the series of 3 webinars that have focused on resiliency. It was developed by Rutgers University for the Together North Jersey Resilient Task Force. The purpose of this webinar is to briefly illustrate a few key functions of a group of web-based coastal resiliency planning tools that are publicly available to be used by local decision makers in the analysis of projected future impacts of climate change in New Jersey's coastal communities. Before we begin, we have a few webinar instructions. First, please be sure to mute your phone, as this webinar is being recorded and will be available at the Together North Jersey website, togethernorthjersey.com, at a later date, along with the previous 2 resiliency webinars. Next, please direct any questions to the bottom right chat box on your screen. We have reserved the last 10 minutes of this webinar to answering any questions that listeners may have. Should we run out of time, please direct any remaining webinar questions to either myself, Stacy, or my colleague, Elliot, at the email addresses seen on the screen. The Resiliency webinar series, consisting of 3, of which today's webinar is the third and final, is a product of the Together North Jersey Resilient Task Force. We would like to thank the following Resilient Task Force members for their guidance and assistance: Rob Freudenberg, Tim Van Epp, Kelly Flicka, Linda Weber, and Melissa Harklerode. The North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority is the federally authorized metropolitan planning organization, or MPO, for the 13 counties in northern New Jersey. The federal government requires each urbanized region of the county to establish an MPO to provide local guidance over the use of federal transportation funds and ensure it is spent cost-effectively to improve mobility, support economic progress, and safeguard the environment. The NJTPA oversees more than $2 billion in transportation improvements each year. The NJTPA Board of Trustees includes representatives from each of the 13 counties, as well as from Newark and Jersey City. The board also includes a governor's representative, the commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Transportation, the executive director of New Jersey Transit, the chairman of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and a citizens representative. The Together North Jersey Resilient Vision is as follows. A resilient North Jersey is ready for adverse events, extreme weather, climate change, economic downturns, or other major setbacks, and can quickly bounce back from them. It protects wetlands and other crucial ecosystems and has strong, well-maintained infrastructure, transportation, utilities, water, sewer, etc. A resilient North Jersey takes steps to be prepared and reduce negative impacts on our communities. My name is Stacy Krause, and I will be the speaker for today. I'm a research associate at the Edward J. Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. This third webinar of the series will focus on the use of web-based resiliency planning tools and offer the key functions available for a small group, with the following sections. First, general information on the tools. Also, the data that is available for viewing and analysis, examples of how these tools have been or could be used at the local level, and links to contacts and further resources, such as video tutorials, for anyone who would like further information on the development, use of, and methods behind these web-based applications. Resources mentioned throughout the webinar are gathered and listed on the 2 resources slides at the end of the presentation, and as a reminder, this webinar will be available on the Together North Jersey website at a later date. Taking a cue from the Together North Jersey's Resilient Task Force and their definition of resilience from a previous slide, a resilient North Jersey takes steps to be prepared and reduce negative impacts on our communities. In incorporating this preparedness into local planning, there are web-based tools that local officials and professionals, and even members of the public, can use to better understand and incorporate climate-related data into local planning. The U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit lists these 5 steps as a framework for discovering and documenting climate hazards. First, explore hazards. In terms of climate resilience in New Jersey, the hazards generally will consist of climate impact projections for sea level rise and storm surge. Second, assess the vulnerabilities at risk. By and large, the assets assessed will be the people, places, and things that may be vulnerable. For example, resident populations, animal habitat, and critical facilities such as police and fire headquarters. Third, investigate options. One of our web-based tools, the Nature Conservancy's Living Shoreline application, does offer some options for municipalities, but in general, these tools lay out the hazards and potential vulnerabilities and then offer resources that users can look into to further develop options that best meet the needs of their specific communities. Fourth, prioritize and plan. Some tools offer a risk score that is calculated as hazard times vulnerability, but in general, the tools are to be used by local officials and professionals to apply local knowledge to the outcomes generated and then plan accordingly. And lastly, take action. This would consist of the implementation of local policy and projects that would be developed in the previous 3 slides. Next, why is it necessary to use web-based resiliency tools? First, climate change science and data are always evolving, and using a reputable source to gather and map this data will assist individuals in fully understanding the complexities of climate change and how it may impact their own community both at present day and further into the future. Second, once the data is understood by local leaders, they can then feel confident in relaying this information to the general public, who will be important partners in future land use planning and infrastructure needs. Lastly, once local leaders and members of the community are versed in future climate impacts, the data can then be used to inform local policy and decision making. When to do this is addressed on the next slide. Resilience tools and the data and mapping they provide can be used in a wide array of local planning policies, initiatives, and also incorporated into planning documents. The following is a handful of examples where this may be possible. First, vulnerability assessments can be done to assess a variety of hazards and vulnerabilities, including not only coastal hazards of sea level rise and storm surge, but also riverine, heat island, and fire, among others. Second, climate adaptation or action plans will use these tools to fully identify the climate-related hazards and then offer specific actions a locality will take in addressing these vulnerabilities. Third, hazard mitigation plans also use resilience tools to identify climate hazards, and hazard mitigation plans prioritize projects and initiatives to address vulnerabilities and infrastructure needs. Next, these tools can be used to locate and compile data for incorporating into local plans, which can then be used to inform policy on various topics, including capital spending and local land uses and codes. Using resilience tools in capital planning can point to areas projected to be impacted by future climate change as either A, an area that local officials and residents may want to direct capital funds to in shoring up the infrastructure, or B, choose to direct funds to areas not projected to be impacted by climate hazards. There are also a multitude of other factors that go into this decision-making process, but utilizing the web-based resilience tools may assist local leaders in making these decisions when specifically related to future projected impacts from climate-related hazards. Land use and zoning plans and regulations direct where land will be developed, what type of development can occur, and the development intensity and density. The utilization of resiliency tools can illustrate where areas are likely to be impacted in the future and can then inform long-range land use planning and future changes to the zoning code accordingly. Where land is protected to be impacted, towns may consider, if possible, preserving the land as open space. Therefore, the resiliency tools can be used as a guide in the identification of these specific areas. Last, specific areas can also be identified for wetland and shoreline restoration projects, again, based upon the level of vulnerability of these areas projected by the resiliency tools. The 4 tools we will be discussing today can be used for coastal resiliency planning in New Jersey. This is not an exhaustive list, simply the more well-known and comprehensive tools available. First, Surging Seas by Climate Central. Second, the Sea Level Rise Viewer by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. Third, the Coastal Resilience Mapping Portal by the Nature Conservancy. And last, the NJ Adapt platform and its 2 resilience-related tools. First, the Coastal Hazard Profiler by the Rutgers Climate Institute, and second, the NJ Flood Mapper by Rutgers and the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve, or JCNER. In the next handful of slides, we'll discuss Climate Central's Surging Seas. Surging Seas is an interactive online tool of maps and information platforms that can be used for both mapping and analysis at the municipal, county, and state level, with outputs available at each of these geographic levels via reports and maps. The general skill level needed for this platform is medium, and while a video tutorial is available, the platform itself is large and contains a lot of information that may be difficult for a novice to fully comprehend. The platform offers the ability to share outputs on social media, which may be useful for local leaders in getting this information out to the public in a mode that is widely used by the vast majority of the public. Listed above are the 6 map and information platforms in the Surging Seas tool. Like with all of the information provided in this webinar, users should feel free to go to the websites and explore all of the platform functions and data sets available. In the essence of time, I will talk about the first 2 options, the Risk Finder and the Risk Zone Map. The other 4 options are Mapping Choice, Seeing Choices, U.S. Cities We Could Lose to Climate Change, and Energy Infrastructure Threat from Sea Level Rise. Going forward in this webinar, when the text appears in the lighter gray color, these items will either not be addressed or be addressed in a brief sentence or 2. This is done to save time, as these topics may not be fully applicable to planning in New Jersey or because the topic is covered in another tool. Climate Central describes the Risk Finder as designed to provide citizens, communities, and policymakers in the U.S. with tailored local information they need to understand and respond to risks of sea level rise and coastal flooding in their own neighborhoods. To use the Risk Finder, the user enters a U.S. coastal location and adjusts the level of sea level rise via a slider bar. The Risk Finder also offers an explanation of historical trends and the latest number of flood days into 2018. This can be useful information when having a dialogue with residents on the flood risk at the local level. The what is at risk information includes population, buildings, infrastructure, contamination risks, and land. This is an example Risk Finder output created for Hoboken, New Jersey. By choosing 3 feet of sea level rise on the slider bar, the summary offers some quick facts on what the consequences of this water level may mean for Hoboken. For instance, the summary tells us that about 220 people in Hoboken live on exposed land below 3 feet. The map in this example is the socially vulnerable population in the area, with red being high, orange being medium, and yellow being low. If you click to the full feature map, you can then get more detailed information on what the social vulnerability data is and what it means for Hoboken. Next, the Risk Zone Map is described as a global interactive map searchable by city or postal code that shows areas vulnerable to permanent submergence from sea level rise or to flooding from sea level rise, storm surge, tides, and tsunamis in different combinations. Compared to the Risk Finder, the Risk Zone Map offers more variables, such as ethnicity, property values, and landmarks. Again, the water level is chosen via a slider bar, and the multiple scenarios are available based on varying levels of carbon emissions and pollution. Using the property mapping option, this map illustrates property values impacted at a water level of 4 feet in an area of Newark, New Jersey. The area projected to be impacted above Ferry Street, which is the northern section of the East Ward, shows property impacted with values of $10 to $100 million per acre. According to the Newark Economic Development Corporation, the East Ward contributes 60% of Newark's residential tax revenue and 80% of the city's commercial tax revenue. Aside from the Risk Finder and Risk Zone map, the remaining map and information platforms are Mapping Choices, which is an interactive global map that allows anyone to type in a coastal city or postal code and visually compare the potential long-term consequences of different emissions and warming scenarios. Scenarios are created for pollution or temperature. Pollution scenarios are based on varying levels of carbon cuts, and temperature scenarios are based on warming of 1.5, 2, 3, or 4 degrees Celsius. Seeing Choices presents an animated global interactive map that reveals the effect of rising global temperature on coastal cities. Users can search for any coastal city to see local locked-in sea level rise as the climate heats up. As the user adjusts the slider bar of global temperature rise, future sea level rise adjusts accordingly. U.S. cities we could lose to the sea illustrates the cities that could be lost to permanent inundation. And lastly, energy infrastructure threat from sea level rise is an interactive map showing electric, natural gas, oil and gas, and other energy facilities in low-lying coastal areas at risk from sea level rise and storm surge. An example of use at the local level is the city of Fort Lauderdale, Florida's use of the Surging Seas map to communicate future sea level rise projections in its city's climate resiliency program for use in its 2035 vision plan and to inform pilot projects, as well as part of the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact. Also, in the research section of the Surging Seas website, reports and studies are listed on work that Climate Central has done at the national level, but also for various states, including reports for some New Jersey communities. The last thing I'll mention on Surging Seas is the information that the website offers on how to apply specific local data in the tool to activities in FEMA's Community Rating System, or CRS. A link to this resource can be found on the resources slide at the end of this webinar. For further information on all of the features offered, visit the help page on the Surging Seas website for a PDF user's guide, videos, and tutorial. The next web-based tool we'll address is NOAA's Sea Level Rise Viewer. The National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration Sea Level Rise Viewer is a web-based mapping tool to visualize community-level impacts from coastal flooding or sea level rise. Outputs available include high tide flood tables, links to real-time tidal data and sea level rise trends, and downloadable data at the county level. The website also offers the ability to share maps on social media. There are 6 tabs or 6 different exercises available on the Sea Level Rise Viewer. 1, sea level rise. 2, local scenarios. 3, mapping confidence. 4, marsh migration. 5, vulnerability. And 6, high tide flooding. The Sea Level Rise Viewer allows users to adjust the water level via a slider bar. The water level can be adjusted from current day mean high water, or the average of all the high water heights observed over a period of time, and up to 6 feet in 1-foot increments. While not available for every location on the map, Local scenarios can be seen by the user zooming into an area of interest and clicking on the closest scenario location available. Water levels can then be viewed by water level scenario or year. Scenarios are based on the water levels seen on the slider bar. So again, current day mean high water and up to 6 feet. And year scenarios can be viewed from the year 2020 up to 2100 at 10-year intervals. Since the scenarios are available at prefixed locations, there are only a few offered in New Jersey, and none lend themselves to graphics that would be viewed well in a PowerPoint presentation. So we'll take a look at a scenario available for Philadelphia. The top picture shows a depth scenario of 3 feet of water, which the tool tells us is the intermediate or middle ground scenario. And the bottom picture illustrates the year scenario for the year 2100. The tool tells us that the intermediate projection for this year is 4.2 feet of water. The corresponding map image on the right shows areas of inundation and would adjust as the user changes the scenario slider bars. The sea level rise viewer offers the caveat that areas of inundation are not precise due to unknowns. These unknowns refer to natural evolutions, such as land migration, as well as general data limitations. When viewing the map in confidence, the blue shading denotes a high confidence that the inundation will occur in the area, the orange represents a high degree of uncertainty, and the unshaded areas represents a high confidence that the area will remain dry at the water level chosen by the user. Like with sea level rise, marsh migration is also viewed by a water depth scenario or by year. To use this feature, the user zooms to an area of interest and clicks on the closest scenario icon on a map. Next, select accretion rate to reflect sediment accumulation conditions that best reflect your area. These rates are flat values applied across the landscape and can be used to highlight how accretion can offset sea level rise. Low sediment accumulation conditions mean the area is more likely to migrate due to climate impacts. Areas with low accretion rates are less likely to offset sea level rise. Marsh migration predictions represent the potential distribution of each wetland type based on their elevation and how frequently they may be inundated under each scenario. As sea levels rise, some marshes may migrate into neighboring low-lying areas, while other sections of marsh will change type or be lost to open water. This map illustrates a marsh migration scenario for the Atlantic City, New Jersey area. The depth scenario is 3 feet of water, which is a rounded number used to represent the intermediate scenario of 2.79 feet as seen on the map. The year scenario shown is 2080. With a low accretion rate, defined in this model as 2 millimeters per year of sediment accumulation, the projected water level for the year 2080 is shown as a rise of 2.89 feet. The Vulnerability tab of the Sea Level Rise Viewer uses data developed by the University of South Carolina. The latest update to this data was done using the 2010 census numbers synthesized into 29 socioeconomic variables. The 8 main variable components determining social vulnerability were wealth, race with sociostatus, age, ethnicity, special needs populations, service sector employment, race, and gender. More detailed information on this analysis can be found on the University of South Carolina's Data's website, and the link to this site can be found on the resources slide at the end of this presentation. This slide displays an example vulnerability map using an area of northern New Jersey. By choosing a water level on the slider bar, in this case 3 feet, red areas on the map are areas with high vulnerability, the medium is displayed in peach, and areas with low vulnerability are shaded in beige. Again, these levels are determined by an analysis done using the variables listed on the previous slide. The last sea level rise viewer tab we'll discuss is high tide flooding. By choosing an area on the map, the red layer represents areas currently subject to tidal flooding or recurrent or nuisance flooding. The coastal flood event frequencies and durations for tide gauges were calculating using observed tidal data over a 5-year period from 2010 to 2015. The example on this slide is an area of southern Ocean County, New Jersey, showing that the vast majority of the coastline, particularly on the bay side, is currently subjected to recurrent or nuisance flooding. The sea level rise data layers from the sea level rise viewer were used in the Ocean County Multi-Jurisdictional All Hazards Mitigation Plan, referred to as the County HMP. This map illustrates vulnerable areas of Manahawkin Borough, with a portion of the borough projected to be inundated by 3 feet of sea level rise. For more information on NOAA's Sea Level Rise Viewer, trainings, videos, and tutorials are available on their website. In the next section, we'll discuss the Nature Conservancy's Coastal Resilience Mapping Portal. The Coastal Resilience Mapping Portal was developed by the Nature Conservancy as a decision support tool that incorporates the best available science and local data to enable communities and conservation practitioners to identify nature-based solutions for enhancing the resilience and reducing risk where possible. The skill level needed is a mix of low to high, depending on which application of the portal is being used, and tutorials and trainings are available. When exploring the tool, users may find that the map layers remain on as the user moves from one application to another, so users should be sure to unselect data layers they do not want visible in their analysis or on their maps. The Resilience Portal has 6 data tabs that they refer to as apps, while the Nature Conservancy has 14 coastal resilience apps available. 5 are available for New Jersey. Due to overlap with other applications, this presentation will address 2 of the portal apps, the Marsh Explorer and the Living Shoreline app. The portal's Marsh Explorer is focused on salt marshes across New Jersey's Atlantic coast, and the purpose of the app is to highlight areas in need of restoration based on the amount and size of various marsh areas, including linear ditches, eroded marsh, unvegetated marsh, and unused dredge lagoons. This slide illustrates a Marsh Explorer example in Brick, New Jersey and Ocean County. By selecting a certain shaded area, the measurements of each marsh attribute is given. Here an area of highest restoration need is chosen and the calculations of the natural features displayed. For example, 6.9 acres of dredged lagoon rated as highest in terms of restoration need. Next, the Living Shoreline app of the Coastal Resilience Portal is a shoreline analysis done at the municipal level. The user selects the shoreline type they are interested in, either A, a tidal marsh, or B, a shoreline that is either forested, beach, or bulkhead. Next, the user can select to display areas of all the shoreline enhancement techniques, or each individual technique one at a time. The 5 techniques include a nature-based living shoreline, a living reef breakwater, a marsh sill, a breakwater, or an ecologically enhanced revetment. Detailed information on each of these techniques is available on the webpage. Also available is more information on key environmental conditions in the chosen area, including the rate of shoreline change and wave height. This is an example in New Brunswick, New Jersey in Middlesex County. We see by the pink and yellow shading along the shore of the Raritan River that there are generally 2 or 3 restoration techniques applicable on this specific shoreline edge. The user would then click on a shaded area to get more detailed information on what these individual techniques entail. An example of the use of the coastal resilience apps at the local level can be seen in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Here, stakeholders use multiple coastal resilience apps in a process to inform the community about where marsh advancement will likely occur in the future and to help identify adaptive solutions to improve community resilience. In this initiative, the portal assisted in the identification of 214 acres of open space parcels where wetland restoration projects could be considered. For more information on the use of the Coastal Resilience Portal, users can visit the training page on the portal website for interactive tutorials. In the last section of the webinar, we'll briefly summarize the resilience tools available in Rutgers University's NJ Adapt platform. The 2 resilience tools available through NJ Adapt are the Coastal Hazard Profiler, which uses NOAA's Coastal Flood Exposure Platform, and the NJ Flood Mapper. Other information available on NJ Adapt includes the Understanding Climate Change tab, which allows viewers to review reports regarding impacts of climate change in New Jersey, the New Jersey Climate Story section, which contains short videos that explain climate change impacts throughout New Jersey and in specific communities throughout the state, and the New Jersey Climate Adaptation Directory, which allows users to search and identify climate change, adaptation, and preparedness data, tools, reports, model policies and ordinances, case studies, and current projects underway in New Jersey, as well as add in information on their own adaptation projects and efforts. The Coastal Hazard Profiler is a platform used to create maps that show people, places, and assets exposed to coastal flooding. It was developed and is maintained by the Grant F. Walton Center for Remote Sensing and Spatial Analysis, also known as CRISA, at Rutgers University. There are 3 map categories available on the Coastal Hazard Profiler: societal maps, environmental maps, and infrastructure maps. The societal map is used to understand the populations that live in or near coastal flood-prone areas. The environmental map displays natural areas that may provide important benefits to coastal communities, including hazard protection, flood storage, water quality maintenance, fishery support, and recreational areas. And the infrastructure map displays community infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and water and sewer systems that could be damaged by coastal flooding. The 3 map categories can then be overlaid by the natural hazard layers. The layers include storm surge, FEMA flood zones, sea level rise, coastal flood exposure, the Coastal Vulnerability Index, shallow coastal flooding, and surge extent from Superstorm Sandy. Detailed information on all of these data layers can be found on the website. This example illustrates a societal map for Bayonne, New Jersey. Here, the number of business establishments is mapped along with the flood extent from Superstorm Sandy. The red area displays a high number of business establishments, and the blue shade represents the flood extent. Local officials could use this tool as a means to communicate flood-proofing and preparedness to local businesses. The Coastal Hazard Profiler also produces municipal snapshots. On the left, we see the multiple options for municipal snapshot data, and sticking with the Sandy search theme from the previous map, the photo on the right is an example of some of the data that pops up for Bayonne when the Superstorm Sandy link is chosen. Other municipal snapshot information available includes flood exposure, wetland benefits, FEMA flood zones, and a link to the Nature Conservancy's Living Shoreline app, which we discussed in the previous section of the webinar. The NJ Adapt platform also offers information on local case studies and research via links to YouTube videos. Here, NJ Adapt Climate Stories explain data and mapping on climate scenarios and hazards in coastal communities, which can be used by local leaders to communicate risk and vulnerability to the public. The NJ Flood Mapper is an interactive mapping website designed to provide a user-friendly visualization tool that will help get information into the hands of local communities who need to make decisions concerning flooding hazards and sea level rise. The platform creators state that this website should be used to promote enhanced preparedness and land use planning decisions with considerations for possible future conditions. The platform was created as a collaboration between Krause and the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve, or JC-NER, and is used regularly by JC-NER in their local outreach efforts. Due to overlap with already mentioned tools, and tab number 8, STAP data currently under development, we will address 2 tabs, sea level rise and their visualizations, and economic vulnerability. The other available tabs were designed using NOAA's Sea Level Rise Viewer platform and are similar in their available data and use. These applications include mapping confidence, flooding, marsh, social vulnerability, and facilities. The NJ Flood Mapper Sea Level Rise tab allows users to choose water levels from current day mean high water and up to 6 feet. This example illustrates the projected impact of 6 feet of water in the Raritan and Sandy Hook Bay. As would be expected, the coastal areas are projected to see significant impact. The small camera icons offer image visualizations of what a specific level of rise may look like at a local location. Visualization locations are available in select areas throughout New Jersey. This example shows the Keensburg Pier at current day mean high water on the left and 4 feet of sea level rise on the right. This tool could be a useful public communication tool in conveying to the general public what a certain scenario of sea level rise may mean for them where they live, such as at their local waterfront park or in the downtown of a coastal community. The Economic Vulnerability tab maps sea level rise with either business locations or the number of employees. This data is mapped using U.S. Census data and is done at the block group level. Here we see an example of the number of employees mapped for an area of Middlesex County along with 6 feet of sea level rise. As expected, areas of high concentrations of workers along the shore of the Raritan River are projected to be highly impacted by sea level rise. In terms of use at the local level, Manasquan in Ocean County, New Jersey lists the NJ Flood Mapper as a resource on its Know Your Flood Hazard website, which is a website of the local Office of Emergency Management. The Manasquan Construction and Code Department itself maintains updated flood insurance rate maps, referred to as FIRMs, as well as mapping that delineates wetlands, coastal high hazard erosion areas, coastal barriers and critical habitat areas, conservation zones, evacuation routes and zones, as well as 100-year flood depth estimates and historical flood mapping. More information on Manasquan's data and mapping efforts can be found on the website listed in the resources slide at the end of the presentation. For more information on the NJ Adapt platform, visit their website for an FAQ as well as video and printed tutorials. That concludes the content portion of the webinar, and should anyone want to take a deeper dive into any of the information, the next two slides offer a list of the resources referenced. And as a reminder, this website will be available at the Together North Jersey website at a future date. So now I'll start a 10-minute Q&A, and as a reminder, if we run out of time or you're unable to stay on the webinar beyond this point or have any other questions, you can email myself or Elliot at the email addresses on the screen. So just looking at some of the questions, does the course offer CEC credits? It's offering 0.75 AICP credits. If you wish to receive other types of credits, you can contact those organizations and see if they'll accept a signed letter from Rutgers University as proof of your attendance. And you can contact Elliot for that. And again, his email address is up on the screen. Also saw a question of where the data was being pulled from for surging seas. And I believe that's a mix of NOAA and perhaps some marsh data by USGS. So what's good about that platform as well as the other platforms is that they have direct links to where they get the data where the data comes from, and also the dates of their latest updates. And NJ Adapt, for example, has a kind of scrolling tab bar underneath the sea level rise tab where you can the data titles are in bold font, and then the information of what they are and where they're from are located right underneath there. As more weather and rising sea info is developed, how often will any of these tools be updated? The Rutgers one was last updated, I believe, in 2016. Surging Seas was updated much more recently, as was NOAA's. My guess is that with NOAA, since they are kind of the first source for this information, for this mapping data, that a lot of these other platforms are relying on, that as NOAA updates their scientific data, that's when the other platforms would be updated, because that's where they pull their data from. So certainly they're all from the past couple of years. I did not see on the actual tabs where, on the actual sites, when they do update these. That I think is something that could be important for them to offer. But again, I'm guessing as NOAA's newest data comes out, that is when the sites will be updated. Can you send a PDF of the presentation to attendees? So that along with the recording will be available on the Together North Jersey website, again, at a future date. If you want something PDF emailed to you, you can also send that request to Elliot at the address on the screen. How can I find which blocks within a municipality have a 2%, for example, chance of flooding? So a lot of the stuff that I looked at besides the census data, so more of the economic and population data, wasn't offered at the block and lot level. So it's just municipality-wide, and then you can kind of zoom in from there. I'm guessing with stuff like that, you might have to look at your local firm mapping to find out exactly where those delineations might be, but they weren't available on these platforms. Looks like we might have another question coming in, so we'll just wait a minute here. Thanks for attending. And again, the recording from this webinar and the previous 2 webinars, which were on wetlands as well as green infrastructure, will be available on the Together North Jersey website. And if you have any questions about the content of those or of this webinar, you can email Elliot. So would you agree that the non-New Jersey data tools are good for local use? I think the data itself is good. I think it's the presentation that may become a little overwhelming to those of us who don't use these tools every day. So the NJ Adapt platform is a bit better because no matter how far you scroll out, you kind of won't get lost because you always seem to know where you are. On some of the bigger platforms, it definitely is, the wider your study area gets, certainly the more confusing it can get. And then, of course, they also offer other information on hazards that we just don't experience here, case studies on certain things that we don't experience here. So easy to use, yes, but I think they're all equally very good and informative. But I think for someone just starting out, I would definitely stick with a more local tool. Just give it another minute or 2 for any other questions. If anybody needs to drop off, thank you for attending. So an example of local New Jersey use, if you check out the NJ Adapt platform, they have a range of their climate and map stories where the data was used at the local level. If anybody from a coastal community is familiar with the Getting to Resilience work that they do at JC Near out of Tuckerton, New Jersey, all of their mapping reports are created using not only the Getting to Resilience assessment, but also the NJ Adapt platform, specifically the flood mapper. Again, there was the sea level rise mapping from the Ocean County Master Plan that used a lot of this data. And I think you'll probably find that in most of the county hazard mitigation plans, if the mapping's not done directly from the platform, the data is downloaded from the platforms. There are also a few latest updates to some master plans throughout New Jersey that incorporate sea level rise and FEMA flood mapping and even some Sandy surge mapping. The name of the one town escapes me. It may be Summers Point, but don't quote me on that. But it's a southern New Jersey town that used the flood mapping platform for that. Jeff's telling everyone, don't forget to log your credits, and he nicely put the link right in there that everyone can click on. And again, for the Rutgers platform specifically, if anybody out there ever does or would like to use these platforms to create maps that you can use for a public visioning session, to put in any of your local planning documents, you can add that work to the platform. You can call a lot of these agencies and they offer direct assistance, whether it just be, directing you to some more help with the tool. But they have examples of a lot of that work on their website. So if that's something that anybody's interested in, I would certainly go through and read their case studies and the research that they've done at the local level to see if any of that might be applicable to you. Just give it one more minute for any questions. But again, just thank everybody for attending today. I hope it was helpful, and I certainly hope everyone goes and kind of plays around with some of these tools a little bit. Still have some people typing, we can see, so we're just going to give it a minute. Nick from across the street said he'll be contacting us for some details. Thanks, Nick. Okay, and with that, I think we'll end it. We see some people dropping off now. So again, thanks everybody for attending today. Check back at the Together North Jersey website for today's presentation and the previous two presentations, and you can email myself or Elliot for any further questions. And again, all of those resources that we referenced are in the slide, and you'll be able to find that on the Together North Jersey website. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.